She walked into the Military Academy Alumni Gala. They laughed, a ripple of snickers mocking her limp, her changed appearance. Corinne Vance just tried to blend in, but their cruel stares followed her every step. Then she decided what she revealed next wasn't just a past, it was a truth so brutal, so deeply etched onto her body. The laughter died in their throats. Their faces went slack. Every single person in that room froze, utterly silent, their eyes locked on the undeniable proof. You won't believe how this story of hidden sacrifice and shocking bravery unfolds. Smash that like button, subscribe to Veteran Biker, and hit the notification bell. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment. The grand ballroom of the Academy Alumni Hall, a place steeped in tradition and the echoes of shared triumphs, tonight felt less like a celebration and more like a brightly lit arena under 1,000 scrutinizing eyes. The heavy double doors, ornate and seemingly designed to amplify every sound, swung inward as Corinne Vance pushed through them. A final, fleeting moment of hesitation, a deep, silent breath she wished could expand beyond her constricted lungs, dissolved into the cacophony that instantly crashed over her. The wave of noise hit first, the insistent rhythmic clinking of ice in glasses, the murmur and swell of 100 simultaneous conversations. Laughter that splintered and echoed off the high ceilings, and the oddly nostalgic, almost taunting strains of an early 2000s pop anthem. It was all a dizzying, disorienting assault on senses long accustomed to the quiet hum of her own apartment. Then, with the auditory assault still ringing in her ears, came the stares. She felt them immediately, tiny sharp pinpricks across her skin, like invisible needles seeking out the imperfections she so meticulously tried to conceal. Each glance, each flicker of recognition seemed to strip away another layer of the carefully constructed facade she wore. She'd prepared for this moment for days, weeks even. It had been a slow, agonizing mental rehearsal in the quiet solitude of her apartment, bracing for the inevitable judgment, steeling herself against the ghosts of a life she'd left behind and the harsh realities of the one she now inhabited. She had meticulously chosen her attire, a perfectly tailored blazer, its dark fabric a strategic choice, designed to drape just so, offering a thin, inadequate shield. Yet the reality, the raw, unfiltered scrutiny, was already proving to be far harsher, more relentless than any anticipation. Her left hand, a reflex born of years of self-consciousness, instinctively moved, not quite clutching but smoothing down the lapel of her jacket, a desperate, silent attempt to further conceal the slight, unavoidable unevenness beneath. A subtle disruption around her collarbone and the upper curve of her chest, a testament to the brutal architect of her pain. The first unmistakable laugh erupted from a tight cluster of officers near the ornate bar. It was Chloe Davis and her perpetual entourage, a gleaming constellation of perfectly coiffed hair, immaculate dress uniforms, and brittle, knowing smiles. Chloe, her own uniform crisp and adorned with ribbons hinting at a comfortable, perhaps less than frontline service, seemed to radiate an aura of self-satisfaction. Her eyes, once narrowed with the casual cruelty of high school judgment, now widened in immediate, undeniable recognition. Then, as her gaze raked down Corinne's form, they narrowed further, settling with predatory precision on Corinne's uneven gait. She leaned conspiratorially towards Brooke Ellis, her whisper a stage hiss of malice, yet audible enough for Corinne's trained ears to catch the fragments. Whatever it was, it made the entire group erupt in poorly concealed snickers, a chorus of obedient sycophants feeding off Chloe's venom. Their laughter, sharp and dismissive, sliced through the general din of the gala, reaching Corinne like a physical blow. "Oh my God, is that Corinne Vance?" Chloe's voice, carefully modulated to carry effortlessly across the room, demanding attention and ensuring her mockery was widely distributed, cut through the music like a whip. What happened to her? She walks like my grandmother after hip surgery. A fresh wave of mocking laughter, louder and more confident this time, followed, a brutal echo in the cavernous hall. Corinne kept her eyes fixed forward, a veteran of harder, far more terrifying battles than this. Her jaw was clenched, a faint tremor running through her left leg, but her expression remained carefully neutral. Her objective was simple, immediate: reach the check-in table. Just 20 more steps, 19. Each step was a small victory, a silent defiance against the unseen forces trying to hold her back. "Name?" asked the woman at the table, her gaze fixed on a meticulously organized guest list, oblivious to the drama unfolding just feet away. "Corinne Vance." The woman's head snapped up, recognition dawning in her eyes, replacing her professional detachment with a surprised, almost pitying glance. "Corinne! Oh wow, it's me, Maya Singh. We were in the same platoon in basic at the academy, remember?" Maya's genuine surprise, a flash of warmth amidst the cold judgment, was a small, unexpected relief. Corinne managed a tight, almost painful smile. "Hey Maya, good to see you." "You too! I heard you went to NYU after graduation. What have you been up to since then?" Maya's question, innocent and well-meaning, hung in the air, ripe for exploitation, before Corinne could formulate a suitably vague and dismissive answer, before she could retreat into the comfortable ambiguity of a civilian life she no longer possessed. A booming voice, dripping with theatrical condescension, cut across their quiet conversation. It was a voice designed to command attention, to assert dominance. Well, 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 look who decided to grace us with her presence. Jake Harrison, former Academy football captain, now undoubtedly a rising star in his respective branch of service, judging by the crispness of his uniform and the gleam of his service ribbons, was making his way toward her. He moved with the effortless swagger of someone utterly convinced of his own importance. A self-satisfied smirk plastered across his handsome face, a drink in hand. A small crowd of admirers and sycophants trailed in his wake, hanging on his every word, basking in the reflected glow of his arrogance. "If it isn't Corinne Vance," Jake Harrison announced, his voice a booming pronouncement that sliced through the general hum of the Military Academy Alumni Gala, effortlessly carrying across the vast, echoing room. He wasn't just speaking, he was performing, demanding the attention of every officer and alumna within earshot. "Too good for everyone else, decided the rest of us were finally worthy of your time." The words dripped with a practiced sarcasm, laced with years of unresolved resentment. Back in their academy days, Jake had been relentless in his petty torment. He'd mocked Corinne's unwavering studiousness, her quiet, almost solitary nature, her steadfast refusal to engage in the trivial social hierarchies or to offer even a polite chuckle at his crude, often demeaning jokes. It seemed 5 years serving, climbing the ranks, building a reputation, hadn't altered him much. He still possessed that conventionally handsome, all-American charm that effortlessly opened doors and inexplicably excused his worst behaviors. And, as always, he was still the gravitational center of a small, eager crowd, a constellation of admiring faces and sycophantic laughter, their eager affirmation continuously fueling his already inflated ego and solidifying his unshakable belief in his own superiority. "Hello, Jake," Corinne responded, her voice a calm, even tone that offered no concession, no flicker of fear. It betrayed none of the internal steel that had been forged in the crucible of real combat, the unyielding resolve that had allowed her to lead missions under brutal fire, to make instantaneous life-or-death decisions in the most chaotic and unforgiving of battlefields. She met his gaze directly, her own eyes steady, unblinking, holding his confident stare without wavering, a silent challenge that seemed to bypass his superficial charm entirely. He grinned, a flash of perfectly white teeth, a predatory gleam in his eyes. He either genuinely missed or deliberately chose to ignore the razor-thin edge in her tone, the unspoken defiance that hinted at depths far beyond his comprehension. "Nice to see the years haven't changed you," he drawled, his voice thick with condescension. "Can't say the same for your presence." His gaze lingered pointedly on her leg, then swept up to her shoulders, an insulting visual inspection. "What's with the zombie shuffle, Vance? Too many soft years in the reserves, perhaps? Or did the real world, the one beyond these academy walls, prove a bit tougher than all those theoretical drills, huh?" He didn't just speak the words, he acted them out. With exaggerated, almost grotesque theatricality, he imitated her walk, mimicking the slight, almost imperceptible drag of her left foot, the careful, precise way she balanced her weight, the subtle, compensating shift in her shoulders. His performance, designed to inflict maximum public humiliation, was undeniably effective. Laughter, sharp and cruel, rippled through his eager audience, a chorus of obedient sycophants feeding off his venom. Someone, emboldened by the group's escalating cruelty, whispered audibly, "Maybe she's had too much to drink already." The suggestion meant to further diminish her, to reduce her to a common spectacle of drunken awkwardness. Corinne felt a familiar, uncomfortable heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her expression neutral, her face a mask of carefully controlled composure. She'd faced worse than Jake Harrison, far worse, 1,000 times worse. This petty mockery, while stinging, was a distant echo of the true horrors she had witnessed and endured. "Just an old injury," she said simply, her voice flat, devoid of emotion, accepting her name tag from Maya, whose eyes now darted uncomfortably between Corinne and Jake, caught in the uncomfortable tension between professional duty and personal sympathy for a fellow alumna. "Must have been one hell of an injury," Jake pressed, his voice dripping with false concern, clearly relishing the attention he was drawing. He shifted his considerable bulk, blocking her path as she tried to move past him, trapping her in his spotlight. "What did you do? Fall off your high horse during some basic training drill? Or maybe you finally decided to actually do something in the field and couldn't hack it?" More laughter, louder this time, rippled through the onlookers. A crowd was forming now, drawn by the public humiliation, old classmates curious about the confrontation, hungry for reunion drama to share on social media later. "Excuse me," Corinne said, her voice strained, attempting to step around him, her patience wearing thin. Jake's grin widened, showing teeth, like a predator cornering its prey. He shifted his body, still blocking her way, refusing to yield. "Come on, Vance. You always were so secretive. Share with the class. Did you get yourself into some administrative blunder? Or—" his eyes gleamed with malice, hinting at a darker, more personal failure. "Did you finally try out for something outside of a textbook and fail spectacularly?" Corinne took a deep, steadying breath. This wasn't what she had come for. She'd come because her therapist, a kind but insistent man who understood the invisible wounds of war, thought it would be good closure, a crucial step in reconnecting with her life before everything changed, before the deployments, before the IED, before the constant gnawing pain that still throbbed in her leg and shoulder. A mistake, clearly. "I should go," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper above the rising din of the gawking crowd. The entire gala seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for her public unraveling. "Already?" Jake feigned disappointment, a mock pout twisting his lips. "But you just got here. At least have a drink first. Though from the looks of it, maybe you've had enough already." He mimicked her walk again, exaggerating the drag, adding a theatrical stumble, a clumsy collapse that made someone in the audience gasp with laughter, a cruel, sharp sound that pierced through the carefully constructed veneer of politeness. "That's enough, Jake!" The sharp command cut through the mocking laughter, a voice of unexpected authority. Layla Khan appeared suddenly beside Corinne, her familiar face a welcome lifeline in the hostile sea of uniformed peers. Layla, who'd been her lab partner in AP chemistry in high school, who'd sent meticulously curated care packages during Corinne's first deployment, a true friend whose loyalty had proven unwavering amidst the shifting tides of military life. Her presence was a small, solid anchor in Corinne's storm-tossed world. "Oh, look! It's the dynamic duo reunited!" Jake raised his glass in a mock toast, his voice dripping with sarcasm, his eyes gleaming with malicious amusement. "Saint Layla, still defending the socially awkward, are we?" Layla ignored him completely, her focus entirely on Corinne. She turned with genuine warmth, a steady light in Corinne's darkening world, her gaze conveying a silent understanding and unwavering support. "I was hoping you'd come tonight, Corinne. It's really good to see you." "You too," Corinne said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. The brief, genuine connection, a moment of true human warmth, was a small, precious anchor in the swirling storm of Jake's mockery. "Let's get a drink," Layla suggested, her hand gently on Corinne's arm, subtly but firmly steering her toward the bar at the far end of the ballroom, away from the mocking crowd. As they moved away, Jake called after them, his voice still loud, still arrogant, determined to have the last word. "That's right! Run away! Some things never change, huh, Vance? Still avoiding a real fight?" The whispers followed them across the room, a venomous current that tried to drown out Layla's steady presence. Corinne caught fragments. What happened to her? She used to be so sharp, so polished. Looks like the war really broke her. At the bar, Layla ordered 2 club sodas with lime, a silent acknowledgement of Corinne's new enforced sobriety since the injury. "I'm so sorry about that," Layla said, her voice filled with genuine frustration, her gaze sympathetic. "Jake's still the same jerk he always was, even in uniform." Corinne shrugged, the movement slightly uneven, a constant, subtle reminder of the unseen battle she fought every single day. "Not your fault." Still, Layla shook her head. "You'd think 5 years in the service would be enough for people to grow up a little, especially in this crowd. We're supposed to be officers, leaders." They found a quiet corner table away from the main throng, a small island of peace in the boisterous gala. For a few minutes they caught up. Layla was thriving, her path clear and purposeful. She was in her 2nd year of medical school, still dating Omar from their chemistry class, still planning to specialize in pediatrics, as she'd always wanted. A life of quiet, steady purpose, so different from Corinne's tumultuous journey. "What about you?" Layla finally asked, her gaze gentle, understanding, as if probing for a wound. "Last I heard, you were deployed to Afghanistan, right?" "That was 3 years ago," Corinne nodded, her eyes distant, running her finger along the condensation on her glass. 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days, but who's counting? Before Layla could respond, before the fragile peace they had found could fully settle, a new shadow fell over their table. Chloe Davis approached. 2 more former cheerleaders and Academy IT girls in tow. Their smiles brittle, their eyes gleaming with cold, calculating curiosity. Without invitation, they pulled up chairs, their movements sharp and deliberate, invading Corinne and Layla's fragile sanctuary. The drama, it seemed, was far from over. The chaotic energy of the Military Academy Alumni Gala swirled around Corinne Vance and Layla Khan, a stark contrast to the quiet corner they had managed to claim near the back of the ballroom. "Here, Away from the glittering central throng and the predatory gazes of Jake Harrison and Chloe Davis, the noise felt less assaulting, the air less charged with judgment. The background hum of conversation and the distant pop music became a more tolerable drone, allowing for a fragile sense of reprieve. Layla, ever the steady presence, had ordered 2 club sodas with lime, a silent acknowledgement of Corinne's new enforced sobriety since the injury, a life dictated by pain management and the absence of alcohol. "I'm so sorry about that," Layla said, her voice filled with genuine frustration as she placed a glass in Corinne's hand. Her gaze was sympathetic, a balm against the lingering sting of Jake's and Chloe's mockery. "Jake's still the same jerk he always was, even in uniform, isn't he?" Corinne managed a slight shrug, the movement subtly uneven, a constant, private reminder of the unseen battle she fought every single day. The dull ache in her left leg, a phantom limb of her old self, throbbed rhythmically. "Not your fault," she murmured, taking a long sip of the cool, fizzy drink. The lime was sharp, cutting through the unpleasant residue of public humiliation. But still, Layla Khan sighed, shaking her head slowly, a gesture laden with a quiet frustration. Her gaze swept across the glittering ballroom, taking in the myriad uniformed figures who, despite their prestigious military titles and polished exteriors, had just demonstrated such shocking immaturity. You'd think 5 years, or even more in the service facing real-world challenges, would be enough for people to grow up a little, wouldn't you? Especially in this crowd. We're supposed to be officers, leaders, the very embodiment of honor and duty, forged in the crucible of this academy's ideals. Yet, she paused, her voice tinged with palpable exasperation. Some of them act like they never truly left the academy's prep school cliques, clinging to the same petty hierarchies and cruel judgments. Her frustration was a tangible thing, a shared exasperation over the enduring, almost baffling immaturity of some of their esteemed peers, a stark contrast to the values they were all supposedly trained to uphold. They managed to navigate the periphery of the still bustling gala, seeking refuge in a small, unoccupied corner table. It felt like an almost clandestine island of peace, a tiny, secluded haven in the midst of the boisterous, judgment-laden atmosphere of the ballroom. Here, away from the glittering central throng and the lingering, predatory gazes of Jake Harrison and Chloe Davis, the general hum of conversation became a more distant, tolerable drone. For a few precious fleeting minutes, the world outside their immediate bubble seemed to recede, allowing them a rare moment of respite. They caught up, a precious, long-overdue exchange between two souls who had once navigated the rigorous, unforgiving demands of the academy together, forging a bond that had withstood time and distance. Layla's presence was a balm, a steady, unwavering light in Corinne's tumultuous journey. Layla was thriving, her path clear and purposeful, a testament to her unwavering dedication. She spoke with a quiet passion about her progress in her second year of medical school, her passion for healing burning brighter than ever with every rotation she completed. She was still steadfastly dating Omar, her steadfast boyfriend from their chemistry class back in high school, a charming, grounding detail that rooted their enduring friendship in a shared, simpler past. Layla recounted the intellectual challenges of late-night studies, the emotional demands of clinical rotations, and her unwavering ambition to specialize in pediatrics, just as she'd always dreamed. Her life, unfolding with a predictable, wholesome trajectory, was a beacon of quiet, steady purpose, a stark and almost painful contrast to Corinne's own tumultuous, fractured journey through war and recovery. In their shared space, amid the lingering echoes of judgment, their friendship remained a testament to unwavering loyalty and authentic connection. Corinne listened, offering brief nods and genuine smiles, finding a quiet comfort in Layla's normalcy, in the predictable, wholesome trajectory of her friend's life. It was a stark reminder of the path Corinne herself might have taken had fate not intervened with such brutal force. She felt a pang of longing, a bittersweet nostalgia for a future that had been irrevocably altered. "What about you?" Layla finally asked, her gaze gentle, understanding, probing not with malice, but with a deep, genuine concern. Her eyes, warm and unwavering, seemed to see past the facade Corinne presented, hinting at a quiet awareness of the invisible burdens her friend carried. "Last I heard, you were deployed to Afghanistan, right? With the Marines?" Corinne nodded, her eyes distant, her fingers tracing the condensation on her glass. The question, though gentle, was a key turning point, a soft entry into the fortified vault of her past. She could deflect, she could lie, she could offer another vague excuse. But looking at Layla, at her genuine concern, the thought of continuing the charade felt suddenly, overwhelmingly exhausting. "That was 3 years ago," she murmured, her voice flat, emotionless. Then, without conscious thought, a raw, precise detail escaped her lips, a truth she carried in the marrow of her bones. 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days. But who's counting? It was a date etched into her very being, a personal marker of the day her world had irrevocably shattered. Before Layla, with her compassionate gaze, could respond, before the fragile peace they had found could fully settle, a new shadow fell over their small table. Chloe Davis approached, her smile a thin, brittle line, her eyes gleaming with cold, calculating curiosity. She was flanked by 2 more former cheerleaders and Academy IT girls, their uniforms immaculate, their presence radiating an almost palpable sense of self-importance and judgment. Without invitation, with a casual arrogance born of unchallenged privilege, they pulled up chairs, their movements sharp and deliberate, invading Corinne and Layla's fragile sanctuary, shattering the illusion of privacy. The drama, it seemed, was far from over. "Corinne Vance," Chloe purred, her voice sweet, saccharine, yet laced with a subtle venom. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. "We were just talking about you. Weren't you supposed to be this big shot at NYU?" She paused, allowing the question to hang, dripping with insinuation. Her gaze raked over Corinne's tired eyes, her subtle limp. "What happened? You look like, well, not like someone who's living their best life, that's for sure." Layla stiffened beside Corinne, her jaw clenching. "Chloe, that's enough." "No, Layla, I'm just being honest," Chloe continued, her smile never wavering, a terrifying mask of false concern. "We're all friends here, right? And friends tell each other when they're concerned." She reached across the table, her manicured hand, adorned with sparkling rings, placing itself on Corinne's wrist, a gesture of patronizing intimacy that made Corinne's skin crawl. "Seriously, hun, are you okay? You look different. And that limp? Did something happen? Car accident? Ski trip gone wrong? Or did the pressure of the military finally get to you?" The false concern was almost worse than Jake's outright mockery, a condescending pity that tried to strip away her dignity under the guise of friendship. Corinne carefully, deliberately extracted her wrist from Chloe's grip. Her voice was steady, calm, betraying nothing of the deep, simmering anger she felt. "I'm fine," she said simply. "Are you, though?" Chloe pressed, her eyes darting to her friends, a silent invitation for them to join the public interrogation. "Because Brooke here," she nodded toward Brooke Ellis, the redhead beside her, "said she heard you dropped out of NYU after just 2 years, and now you show up looking like this. People are talking, Corinne. Everyone's wondering, did you fail out of the military too?" Corinne studied Chloe's face, noticing the eagerness, the malicious glee behind the feigned concern. The room around them seemed to fade, the general hum of conversation quieting, as if drawn by the magnetic pull of unfolding drama. More and more people turned, their faces a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled anticipation, eager to watch the uncomfortable exchange. Jake Harrison, drink refreshed, had conveniently wandered over, planting himself within earshot, clearly hoping for more entertainment at Corinne's expense. The circle around their table had grown, dozens of eyes now locked on Corinne, waiting for her response, waiting for the crack in her composure. "You know what?" Corinne said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tightness in her chest, the dull ache in her leg flaring. "You're right, Chloe. You all are." Chloe's brittle smile widened, victorious, her eyes gleaming with self-satisfaction. "I knew it! So, what happened? Partying too hard? Couldn't keep up with the coursework? Or did you just realize you weren't cut out for officer life?" The questions tumbled out, relentless, each one designed to inflict maximum damage, to confirm their preconceived notions of her failure. The circle around their table was now a dense, silent ring. Corinne could feel dozens of eyes on her, waiting for her humiliation, waiting for her to break. She glanced at Layla, who gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod of encouragement, her eyes radiating unwavering support. In that moment, Corinne made a choice. She wouldn't run, she wouldn't hide, she wouldn't let them define her any longer. With deliberate, almost ceremonial movements, Corinne set down her drink glass on the table. The soft clink of glass against wood seemed to echo in the sudden hush that had fallen over the entire nearby crowd. Then, slowly, deliberately, she stood up. The silence deepened, becoming absolute, pregnant with anticipation. Every eye in the room, from Jake's smug smirk to Chloe's calculating gaze, was fixed solely on her. "I left NYU," Corinne Vance declared, her voice carrying effortlessly in the sudden profound quiet that had fallen over the gala hall. Her words, calm and clear, resonated with an undeniable truth, cutting through the lingering tension like a sharpened blade. "Because I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps." The effect was immediate and visible, a collective intake of breath rippling through the assembled officers and alumni. Eyebrows shot up, expressions shifted from smug mockery to utter confusion, then to dawning disbelief. A few scattered whispers broke the silence, hushed and disbelieving. "The Marines?" someone murmured. "Corinne Vance?" The very idea seemed to defy the image they held of her, the quiet, studious girl, seemingly destined for a conventional civilian life of academia. Jake Harrison's self-satisfied smirk dissolved into a gaping astonishment, his mouth hanging slightly open. "The Marines?" he repeated, disbelief thick in his tone, utterly unable to reconcile the revelation with his preconceived notions. "You? But you were always so, you know." He gestured vaguely, his hand flailing helplessly in the air, searching for the right words, for any words that could bridge the chasm between his perception and this stark reality. So quiet, so studious, so unwilling to laugh at our jokes. His voice trailed off, the arrogance replaced by a floundering bewilderment. He even had the decency to look slightly embarrassed, a rare flush creeping up his neck. "So what, Jake?" Corinne asked, holding his bewildered gaze with unwavering intensity. Her voice was steady, calm, yet held a steel that promised no quarter. Her posture, usually slightly guarded, now radiated an almost palpable strength, a quiet authority that commanded attention. She wasn't just speaking to Jake and Chloe anymore. She was addressing the entire gathering that had formed a silent, expectant ring around them. "I enlisted in 2022, Corinne continued, her voice resonating with clarity, a stark contrast to the whispered mockery that had just minutes before filled the air. She spoke not just to inform, but to reclaim her narrative, to lay bare a truth that had defined her for years. I was deployed with the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines to Afghanistan in early 2023. The words, Afghanistan deployed, Marines hung in the air, heavy with unspoken weight, conjuring images of distant deserts and unseen conflicts, starkly out of place in the glittering ballroom. Then came the moment that would forever alter the atmosphere of the gala. With deliberate, almost agonizingly slow movements, Corinne began to unbutton the top buttons of her perfectly tailored blazer. Every eye in the room, from the curious onlookers to the now horrified faces of Jake and Chloe, was riveted on her hands, on the subtle reveal beneath the fabric. The buttons gave way one by one, exposing the crisp white shirt beneath. Then, with a soft, almost inaudible sigh, she pulled the lapel of her blazer slightly to the side, allowing it to fall open. What she revealed next wasn't just a glimpse of skin. It was a prominent, jagged scar running diagonally across her collarbone and extending slightly onto the upper curve of her chest. The scar was thick, puckered, a stark, angry line of reddish-purple tissue against her pale skin, a brutal testament to a violence that had visited her body. It was a physical manifestation of a trauma that words alone could not fully capture. It pulsed with a silent, profound story of pain and survival. This was the undeniable proof. This, she declared, her voice, though a low, guttural murmur, sliced through the stunned silence like a physical force. Her gaze remained unwavering, meeting the horrified, transfixed stares of her former peers, forcing them to confront the brutal truth. This, she repeated, sweeping her hand over the prominent, jagged scar etched onto her collarbone and upper chest, is why I walk with a zombie shuffle, as you so eloquently put it, Jake. Our convoy hit an IED outside Helmand province. 3 of my squad didn't make it home. The words landed with the impact of a thunderclap. The silence that followed was absolute, a suffocating vacuum that swallowed the last lingering echoes of laughter, the faint clinking of glasses, the very ambient hum of the gala. The DJ, his face pale, sensing the monumental seismic shift in the room's energy, instinctively, quietly, cut the music entirely. The only sound left was the profound, crushing weight of Corinne's revelation, hanging in the air like a shroud. Chloe Davis's smug, victorious smile, so recently triumphant, vanished entirely, replaced by a mask of stunned, unfiltered horror. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, fixed on the raw, undeniable testament etched onto Corinne's skin. The color drained from Chloe's face, leaving it ashen. Jake Harrison, the picture of swaggering confidence moments before, now stared fixedly at the polished floor, his usual bravado utterly evaporated. His shoulders slumped, as if an invisible, crushing weight had suddenly descended upon him, forcing him to confront his own petty cruelty. His earlier mockery seemed to echo now, hollow and grotesque. In the vast, sudden emptiness of the ballroom, a chilling indictment of his own ignorance. "I have titanium rods holding my left leg together," Corinne continued, her voice steady, remarkably devoid of any self-pity or anger. Instead, it resonated with a quiet, unyielding, steely strength that commanded every ear. Her words were delivered as simple, brutal, unadorned facts, each one landing with devastating clarity. 6 surgeries on my hip, 4 on my shoulder. The doctors weren't even sure I'd walk again, let alone without assistance. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the horrified faces, locking with Chloe's. "So yes, Chloe, something did happen. Something happened that changed everything. Something that changed me." Layla Khan, ever the steady, unwavering presence, reached instinctively for Corinne's hand. Her fingers found Corinne's and squeezed gently, a silent, powerful gesture of unwavering support, of shared grief, and an unbreakable bond of friendship forged in a different kind of fire. Maya Singh, drawn by the sudden, absolute silence, had made her way over from the check-in table. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock, profound empathy, and a dawning, uncomfortable understanding. "Corinne, We had no idea," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible, a fragile admission of their collective ignorance. "How could you?" Corinne asked, her tone not unkind, not accusatory, but merely stating a simple, painful truth. Her gaze swept over the now ashamed faces in the crowd. "Most of you stopped keeping track of me the day after graduation, which is fine. That's life. We all went our separate ways. I don't blame you." She slowly, deliberately rebuttoned her blazer, covering the scar that had rendered everyone speechless, retreating physically but not emotionally. The act of concealment, once driven by self-consciousness, now served to underscore the truth she had just revealed, that some wounds, some stories were simply too profound for casual display. "I didn't come here tonight for pity," she said firmly, her voice regaining its strength, resonating through the silent room. "Or for apologies. I came because 5 years ago we all walked out of this academy thinking we knew exactly who we were and where we were going. Life had other plans for me. And I'm guessing it did for some of you too." A few heads nodded in the crowd, a scattering of silent affirmations. Someone in the back, whom Corinne couldn't clearly see through the dim lighting, quietly wiped away a tear. "The thing about war," Corinne said, her voice softening, a profound weariness seeping into her tone, "is that it strips away everything superficial. Every single day, you see people at their most vulnerable, their most afraid, their most brave. You stop caring about who was popular in the academy, or who had the best grades, or who said what about whom." She looked directly at Jake Harrison, whose face had drained of all color, his earlier arrogance replaced by a profound, almost childlike shame. "You start caring about who has your back when everything goes to hell, who picks you up when you can't stand on your own, who remembers your humanity when the world seems determined to take it away." The silence from the DJ continued, the profound quiet amplifying every word, making Corinne's message resonate with a raw, undeniable power in a room that just minutes before had been filled with superficial reminiscence and petty judgments. Her words hung in the air, weighty and real, settling like dust over the shattered remains of their comfortable perceptions. The profound silence that had fallen over the Military Academy Alumni Gala after Corinne Vance's stark revelation was finally, mercifully broken. A man Corinne vaguely recognized from her time at the Academy, perhaps a year or two ahead of her, stepped forward from the hushed crowd. His uniform was crisp, his face etched with a dawning recognition and a profound solemnity. "My brother was in Afghanistan in 2023, he said, his voice quiet but clear, cutting through the heavy air. 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. Corinne's gaze snapped to him, recognition dawning in her own eyes. The name, the unit, the year, it all clicked into place. "Liam Miller?" she asked, her voice a low murmur of surprise. The man nodded, his face mirroring the raw emotion that suddenly surged between them. "Your brother is Ethan Miller?" "Yes," Liam Miller confirmed, a flicker of pain and pride in his eyes. "Ethan, he talked about you. Said you were the one who pulled Rodriguez to safety after the blast. Said you kept him conscious until the medevac arrived, even though you were injured yourself." A murmur, a collective gasp of dawning understanding, rippled through the crowd. This wasn't just a former classmate recounting a personal tragedy. This was a comrade, a brother in arms, confirming her heroism. Chloe Davis, who had mocked Corinne's limp and appearance, looked utterly stricken, her earlier cattiness replaced by a genuine, profound shock that twisted her features. Jake Harrison, who had so cruelly imitated her gait, stared at the floor, his face pale, his usual swagger utterly evaporated. "Corinne," he began, his voice a strained whisper, but he seemed unable to find words adequate for the moment, for the weight of his own appalling behavior. The air in the room had changed completely. Where there had been mockery and judgment, now there was something like respect, tinged with a deep, searing shame at their earlier cruelty. A heavy, almost suffocating silence hung in the ballroom, now devoid of music. The revelation of Corinne's service and the brutal reality of her sacrifice had transformed the atmosphere entirely. It was a mirror held up to their own superficiality, reflecting their judgmental laughter back as something monstrous. Where there had been mocking jests and casual dismissals, now there was a palpable sense of collective shame, a shared burden of guilt for their unkindness. Jake Harrison was the first to explicitly break that crushing silence. He set his drink down on a nearby table with a soft thud that seemed to echo loudly in the quiet room. He stepped forward, his shoulders slumped, his usual confidence gone, replaced by a raw, uncomfortable vulnerability. "Corinne, he started, then stopped, swallowing hard, seeming to struggle with the enormity of what he needed to say. "I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. I was being a complete jackass." Corinne regarded him steadily, her gaze unwavering, neither forgiving nor condemning, simply observing. "Yes," she stated, her voice flat, acknowledging the undeniable truth of his words. "You were." A nervous, uncomfortable laugh rippled through the stunned crowd, a brief, fragile sound that broke some of the tension, allowing a collective, hesitant sigh of relief. "I deserved that," Jake admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes fixed on hers. "What I said, how I acted, there's no excuse. None at all." "No," Corinne agreed, her voice still quiet, but firm. "There isn't." Chloe Davis then stepped forward too, her earlier smugness completely gone, replaced by a profound, genuine contrition that etched lines of remorse on her face. Her eyes, which had been so sharp with judgment, were now wide with a dawning empathy. "I'm sorry too, Corinne," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I had no idea what you've been through. I feel terrible." Corinne looked around at the faces watching her now, faces that had, just minutes ago, been twisted with derision, suspicion, and casual cruelty. Now they showed remorse, respect, and in some cases, outright awe. The shift was almost physical, a palpable transformation of judgment into understanding. She took a deep, steadying breath, the air feeling lighter now, less charged with hostility. "Here's the thing," she said, her voice carrying in the hushed room, addressing not just Jake and Chloe, but everyone present. "You shouldn't need to know someone was in a war to treat them with basic decency." The words landed heavily, resonating with a quiet power. Several people in the crowd visibly shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact, their gazes dropping to their polished shoes or the patterns on the carpet. The truth of her statement, simple yet profound, seemed to settle over them, a silent indictment of their earlier behavior. "Corinne's right," Layla Khan said, stepping forward, her steady presence a solid pillar of support beside Corinne. Her voice was firm, resonating with conviction. "We're quick to judge based on what we see without bothering to understand the story behind it. We're taught to analyze, to assess, to quickly categorize people. But sometimes the most important battles are the ones we can't see." Liam Miller, whose brother Ethan Miller had served with Corinne, approached her with a respectful nod, his face still etched with the emotion of his brother's connection to Corinne. "My brother would want to be here tonight," he said, his voice thick with unvoiced gratitude. "He always said you were the strongest person he knew. He spoke of your courage, your unwavering calm. How is James?" Corinne asked, genuine concern softening her features, pulling her momentarily from the tense atmosphere of apologies into a space of shared camaraderie. The question was not a polite formality, but a sincere inquiry about a comrade's well-being. "He's good," Liam replied, a smile touching his lips. "Finishing college now on the GI Bill. Still talks about the unit all the time." Liam hesitated, then added, his voice lowering, He has nightmares sometimes. The blasts, the memories. Corinne nodded slowly, her understanding deep and immediate. We all do, she confirmed. A quiet acknowledgement of the invisible wounds they shared. A common bond that transcended rank, branch, or time. The DJ, who had intuitively sensed the profound mood shift in the ballroom, had quietly changed the music from the upbeat pop anthem to something softer, more reflective, a poignant melody that filled the space with a contemplative air. The harsh party atmosphere had completely dissipated, replaced by a quiet solemnity. People began to drift away from the immediate circle that had formed around Corinne, processing what they'd heard, re-examining their own behaviors. The collective shame was still palpable, but now it was tinged with a dawning respect and a quiet, uncomfortable introspection. Some sought out friends, whispering, perhaps sharing their own untold struggles. Maya Singh approached Corinne from the check-in table, carrying a fresh bottle of water. "Thought you might want this," she offered, her voice gentle, her eyes reflecting a newfound awe. And I wanted to say, well, thank you for your service, obviously, but also for what you just said about not needing to know someone's whole story to be kind. That really hit home. Corinne accepted the water with a small, genuine smile, the warmth of Maya's simple words a quiet comfort. "Thanks, Maya." As the night continued, a curious, almost miraculous transformation took place within the gala hall. The superficiality that had initially defined the reunion began to peel away. People who had previously avoided Corinne now approached her, not with pity or discomfort, but with genuine interest, their initial judgment replaced by a quiet, earnest curiosity. Conversations that began awkwardly with hesitant apologies evolved into meaningful exchanges. Stories were shared, not just about Corinne's military experience, but about everyone's personal journeys since graduating from the academy. Their own unseen battles, their own unexpected turns. The uniforms in the room seemed to fade, replaced by the raw, vulnerable humanity beneath. The profound silence that had seized the Military Academy Alumni Gala after Corinne Vance's stark revelation and Liam Miller's poignant confirmation slowly, almost miraculously, began to fracture. The immediate, searing shame that had burned away the room's superficiality now gave way to a different kind of quiet, a thoughtful, introspective hush. People who had formed the tight, mocking circle around Corinne began to disperse, not with their usual boisterous energy, but with a newfound sobriety, their faces reflecting a complex mix of guilt, awe, and a nascent understanding. They drifted away from the epicenter of the truth bomb, processing what they'd heard, re-examining their own behaviors, their own unvoiced assumptions about life, success, and hidden burdens. The collective shame was still palpable, a heavy cloak draped over the room, but now it was tinged with a dawning respect and a quiet, uncomfortable introspection that compelled many to look inward. Corinne remained where she stood, beside Layla Khan, the physical act of buttoning her blazer having reasserted a fragile sense of control over her body, though her mind still reeled from the intensity of the reveal. The raw edge of the anger and pain that had fueled her revelation began to recede, leaving behind a profound weariness, but also a nascent sense of release. The truth finally was out. The immense weight she had carried for so long, the burden of being misunderstood, of having her sacrifice cheapened by ignorance, felt marginally lighter, even amidst the persistent throbbing ache in her left leg and the phantom pull of the jagged scar beneath her uniform. She watched the shifting dynamics of the room, observing the subtle ways people's postures changed, their gazes softening, their previous judgments dissolving into something more akin to empathy, or perhaps even a hesitant curiosity. Maya Singh was the first to approach Corinne with more than just a fleeting glance. Her steps were hesitant at first, then more determined, weaving through the now diffuse clusters of attendees. She carried a fresh, unopened bottle of water, its condensation cool against the glass, and offered it to Corinne. "Thought you might want this," Maya murmured, her voice gentle, almost tentative, a stark contrast to the brisk efficiency she displayed at the check-in table. Her eyes, usually sharp and observant, now held a newfound awe, a quiet respect that spoke volumes. "And I wanted to say, well, thank you for your service." Obviously, she began the familiar phrase, often uttered as a reflexive platitude, now imbued with genuine reverence. Then her voice deepened with sincere, almost trembling conviction, "but also for what you just said about not needing to know someone's whole story to be kind. That really hit home for me. It made me think about a lot of things, about how quickly we judge without seeing the real person." Corinne accepted the water, the cool bottle a small anchoring presence in her palm. She offered Maya a small, genuine smile, a warmth spreading through her chest that eased some of the fatigue. "Thanks, Maya," she murmured, feeling a sincere connection forming where only a transactional exchange had existed before. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes about the shift in the room's collective consciousness. As the night continued its slow, inevitable slide towards conclusion, a curious, almost miraculous transformation unfolded within the grand hall. The veneer of superficiality that had initially defined the reunion began to peel away, revealing raw, vulnerable layers beneath the polished uniforms and forced smiles. People who had previously avoided Corinne, perhaps intimidated by her quiet intensity or simply uninterested in someone who didn't fit their narrow definition of academic or military success, now approached her. Not with pity or discomfort, but with a dawning, genuine interest, their initial judgment replaced by a quiet, earnest curiosity. Conversations that had begun awkwardly, with hesitant apologies or mumbled excuses, began to evolve into something far more meaningful, more profound. The air, once thick with judgment, now seemed to vibrate with shared humanity. Stories were shared not just about Corinne's brutal military experience, but about everyone's personal journeys since graduating from the academy. The illusion of perfect careers and idyllic lives began to crack, revealing the myriad imperfections that made them real. Behind the gleaming service ribbons and forced smiles, people confessed their own unseen battles, the quiet struggles that had shaped them in ways no one at the academy or even in their early careers would ever have guessed. Stories of crushing student loan debt, painful divorces, the isolating struggles with anxiety or depression that they'd hidden behind a mask of professionalism, unexpected illnesses, the quiet despair of dreams deferred. Corinne listened patiently, offering quiet nods of understanding, a sympathetic gaze, a shared humanity that transcended their different paths. The uniforms in the room seemed to fade, replaced by the raw, vulnerable humanity beneath, a tapestry of shared burdens and unexpected connections. Brad Cooper, a former classmate known for his jovial nature and athletic prowess, now a physical therapist, approached Corinne with a professional yet deeply empathetic demeanor. "Corinne," he began, his eyes scanning her gait, her posture, his professional eye already assessing the subtle imbalances. "I heard what happened. It sounds like a brutal injury, especially involving the hip and shoulder. I work a lot with veterans at the VA hospital now, helping them with long-term recovery and adapting to life with these kinds of injuries. It's a lifelong journey, I know." He paused, his gaze earnest. "If you ever want to try some alternative therapies for your hip, or just need someone to talk through the physical rehab, understanding what it really takes, I'd be happy to share some resources. No strings attached, just a fellow alumnus who gets it." He slipped her a discreet business card, his concern genuine. "You've been through a lot, Corinne. You don't have to carry it all yourself." Corinne felt a profound flicker of gratitude. It was an offer of tangible help, free of judgment, from someone who understood the complexities of physical recovery that extended far beyond a medical chart. Later, Brooke Ellis, who had laughed along with Chloe earlier, her initial ridicule now a distant, shameful memory, approached Corinne with a hesitant, almost shy apology. Her eyes, once sharp with ridicule, were now softened by a quiet vulnerability. "Corinne, I'm so incredibly sorry," she began, her voice barely a whisper filled with genuine remorse. I had no idea what you've been through. It was horrible of us, truly." She fidgeted with her glass, avoiding direct eye contact for a moment before gathering courage. "My younger brother has autism," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "People judge him all the time based on how he acts in public, how he might react to certain sounds or lights, how he struggles with social cues. They never bother to know him, how brilliant he is with computers, how incredibly kind he is. Your words about unseen battles, it just hit me. I was doing exactly what I hate people doing to my brother, judging a book by its cover." A single brave tear traced a path down her cheek. Corinne simply nodded, offering a small, understanding smile, her gaze gentle. No words were needed. The shared pain of being judged for what wasn't immediately visible, for what couldn't be easily understood, created an unexpected, powerful bond between them. The grand ballroom, once a stage for shallow judgment, had, under Corinne's quiet strength, become a crucible for profound, unexpected human connection. The laughter had ceased, replaced by the quiet hum of introspection and genuine conversation. Even Jake Harrison, after giving Corinne a wide berth for most of the evening, avoiding her gaze as he spoke in hushed tones with his remaining entourage, eventually found himself drawn back to her orbit as the gala was gradually winding down. The arrogant swagger that had defined him for years seemed to have been stripped away, replaced by a raw, uncomfortable humility. His uniform, still pristine, now seemed to hang heavy on him, burdened by the weight of unspoken grief and confession. "Corinne," he began, his voice low, rough, utterly devoid of his usual bravado. He looked profoundly uncomfortable, shifting his weight, avoiding her direct gaze for a long moment, before finally managing to meet her eyes, a flicker of something profoundly vulnerable in their depths. "I've been thinking about what you said." He paused, swallowing hard, then spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "About battles we can't see." Corinne nodded, waiting patiently, her gaze unwavering but gentle. She sensed a deeper confession coming, an unseen wound about to be exposed, a mirror reflecting her own hidden pain. "My dad died last year," Jake said quietly, the words almost a whisper in the now quieter ballroom, a profound confession offered in the hushed intimacy of their small circle. "Heart attack, no warning, just gone." His voice cracked, betraying the immense unspoken grief he carried, a raw, fresh wound. "I've been putting on this whole act tonight, Corinne, like everything's great, like I'm still the man, the Academy's golden boy. But the truth is," he trailed off, taking a ragged breath, his shoulders slumping, "the truth is, I'm barely holding it together most days. I wake up in cold sweats thinking about him, and then I just bury it under work, under appearances, under—" He gestured vaguely, his hand encompassing the entire gala, the glittering facade of perfection he had so desperately tried to maintain. "It's exhausting." "I'm so sorry about your dad, Jake," Corinne said sincerely, her voice soft, empathetic, tinged with her own deep understanding of loss. The words were not just polite condolences. They carried the weighty empathy of someone who knew the crushing blow of grief and the desperate, often isolating, need to bury it, to perform a charade of strength for the world. Jake shrugged, a small, uncomfortable gesture, clearly unaccustomed to such raw vulnerability, especially in front of someone he had just moments ago tried to publicly humiliate. "Anyway, I just wanted to say that what you did, your service, coming back from your injuries, it's incredible." He met her gaze again, his eyes clear now, devoid of mockery, filled with a dawning respect that finally saw her, truly saw her, beyond the limp and the rumors. "And I was an idiot earlier, a complete idiot. We were all idiots in high school, weren't we?" he added, a desperate plea for a shared past, for some form of absolution, a way to bridge the chasm his cruelty had created. Corinne offered a small, knowing olive branch, a faint, compassionate smile touching her lips. "Some of us just take longer to grow up, Jake." He laughed at that. A genuine sound, rich and unburdened, utterly unlike the mocking, sarcastic tone from earlier. It was a sound of release, of shared humanity, of a burden acknowledged and perhaps lightened. "Touché, Vance. Touché." The brief, unexpected and raw exchange sealed a new, fragile understanding between them, transforming their bitter rivalry into something that resembled mutual respect, a testament to the power of vulnerability and truth. The grand, echoing ballroom, once a stage for shallow judgment, had, under Corinne's quiet strength and unwavering honesty, become a crucible for profound, unexpected human connection, revealing the true scars beneath the polished uniforms. The last lingering strains of the reflective music, a soft, melancholic melody, finally faded into the vastness of the Military Academy Alumni Gala Hall. The grand event, which had begun with such brittle gaiety and sharp judgment, was now entering its slow, inevitable descent into conclusion. Clusters of officers and alumni, once tightly packed and boisterous, began to thin, their conversations softening from a triumphant roar to a contented murmur. The sporadic clinking of glasses, once a constant counterpoint to laughter, became an infrequent, almost poignant sound, echoing more distinctly in the gradually emptying space. Corinne Vance, standing beside Layla Khan, felt the subtle shift in the air, a quiet exhale after hours of intense emotional charge. Layla, ever the steadfast anchor in Corinne's tumultuous night, gently helped her friend into her blazer. The fabric, once a shield against unwanted scrutiny, now felt like a comforting embrace. Its familiar weight settled on Corinne's shoulders, a small anchor against the immense emotional currents that had swept through her. The dull, persistent ache in Corinne's hip and shoulder, a loyal companion of her chronic pain, throbbed with a familiar rhythm, perhaps exacerbated by the prolonged standing and the sheer intensity of the evening's revelations. Yet beneath this physical fatigue, a profound and utterly unexpected sensation bloomed, a fragile, nascent feeling of lightness, of release, of catharsis. It was a sensation she hadn't known was possible, a quiet liberation from a burden she had carried for so long. "How are you feeling?" Layla asked, her voice soft, infused with a compassionate understanding that transcended words. She studied Corinne's face intently, her eyes searching for any lingering signs of the immense emotional toll the evening must have taken. The lines of tension around Corinne's eyes seemed less pronounced, her jaw less tightly clenched. Corinne considered the question, truly turning it over in her mind, allowing herself to be honest not just with Layla but with herself. The weariness was deep, bone deep, a heavy cloak draped over her body, yet an unexpected sense of peace, a quiet calm began to settle in her core. "Surprisingly okay," she answered, her voice a little rough from disuse and emotion, but firm. She met Layla's gaze, a small, genuine smile, unforced and raw, touching her lips. This went so differently than I expected, so incredibly differently." Layla smiled, a knowing, triumphant curve of her lips. She understood the immense courage it had taken for Corinne to stand there, exposed and vulnerable, and the profound impact of her truth. "You changed something in this room tonight, Corinne," Layla asserted, her voice filled with conviction. Her gaze swept across the few remaining clusters of attendees, observing the lingering quietness, the altered expressions, the subtle shifts in their interactions. The superficiality that had defined the evening's early hours had been stripped away, replaced by an authenticity that felt almost sacred. You made people see beyond themselves, beyond their assumptions. You broke through the armor. Corinne nodded, her gaze following Layla's, observing the palpable shift in the atmosphere, the residue of transformation settling like a fine dust over the room. "Maybe," she conceded softly, a hint of weariness in her voice, but no longer any doubt. Or maybe they just needed a reminder that everyone has a story, and that the person you think you know from a glance, from a limp, from a uniform, from a rumor, that's never the whole picture. Her words hung in the air, a final, profound truth resonating in the quiet hall, a quiet benediction over the evening's unexpected revelations. As the last attendees gathered their belongings, their movements now less hurried, more contemplative, exchanging final, hushed goodbyes, Corinne and Layla made their way towards the grand main exit. The path that had felt like a gauntlet when Corinne first entered, a corridor lined with mocking eyes and cruel whispers, was now remarkably different. The air, once thick with judgment, now seemed to carry a gentle respect. No longer were there sneers or snickers. No longer did she feel the sharp pinpricks of judgment. Instead, there were quiet nods of respect, fleeting glances of admiration, and soft, genuine goodbyes. Corinne whispered like a benediction. Some even paused, their faces earnest, to offer hesitant, warm smiles, a silent acknowledgement of the bravery they had witnessed. A few, their eyes filled with a dawning understanding, simply offered a silent nod, a gesture that spoke volumes about the shift from contempt to reverence. The transformation was undeniable, a testament to the raw power of truth. Corinne walked out of the ballroom, her gait still uneven, the subtle drag of her left leg a persistent physical reminder of the IED in Helmand Province, the titanium rods embedded in her bone. But her head was held high, her shoulders squared, her posture radiating a newfound dignity that transcended the physical limitation. The chronic discomfort remained, a dull, familiar companion she had learned to live with, but the crushing emotional burden had, for the first time in 5 years, truly lessened. The immense weight of being misunderstood, of having her sacrifice reduced to an object of pity or mockery, had been lifted, replaced by a profound sense of validation. The grand doors swung shut behind them, muffling the last whispers of the gala. As she stepped out into the cool night air, the gentle breeze a welcome caress on her face, Corinne glanced back one last time at the illuminated hall. She thought about the individuals who had filled it, the broad spectrum of her peers from this prestigious military academy, and the broader alumni network they represented. They had laughed when she walked in, dismissing her, judging her by a superficial glance. But as she walked out, they watched with new eyes, eyes that had learned to look beyond the surface, beyond the superficial judgments that often plagued their polished lives, beyond their own carefully constructed assumptions of success and strength. In seeing her physical scars, the jagged line across her collarbone and upper chest, the implicit damage to her leg and hip, perhaps they had begun to acknowledge their own. The invisible scars of grief, of inadequacy, of career disappointments, of personal battles fought in silence, of the raw, vulnerable humanity that lay beneath every crisp uniform. The conversation with Jake Harrison echoed vividly in her mind, his raw, unexpected confession about his father's death. It had been a moment of profound, almost shocking connection, a testament to the universal nature of hidden pain. Jake, the golden boy, the epitome of academy success and outward bravado, had been quietly crumbling under the immense weight of silent grief, just as Corinne had struggled under the suffocating shadow of her own physical and emotional wounds. His honesty, born from Corinne's courage, had been a surprising, unexpected gift, revealing that even the most seemingly invincible among them carried their own burdens, their own profound vulnerabilities. This was the true meaning of the unseen battles, battles fought not on distant fields of combat, but within the quiet confines of the soul, against depression, anxiety, imposter syndrome, the gnawing ache of unfulfilled expectations, or the quiet despair of a life not turning out as planned. Corinne realized that her choice to reveal her truth wasn't just about her own healing, it was about creating a space for others to acknowledge their own vulnerability. In exposing her wounds, she had inadvertently given permission for others to recognize theirs, to perhaps even begin the arduous journey of healing their own hidden scars. This gala, initially a superficial performance of success and prestige, had, for a precious few hours, transformed into a sanctuary of raw honesty and unexpected human connection. The air, once filled with polite but empty chatter, had been purified by truth, leaving behind a subtle hum of shared understanding. Her thoughts drifted to other brief, yet deeply meaningful encounters throughout the night. The young officer who had confessed his private struggle with anxiety, always fearing he wasn't tough enough for the rigorous demands of military life, his perfect uniform concealing a mind often at war with itself. The alumna who spoke of her quiet, heartbreaking battle with infertility, feeling like a failure in a community that often celebrated lineage and family, a silent pain no one outside her closest circle knew. The decorated veteran who admitted to feeling utterly lost in civilian life despite a stellar service record and numerous commendations, finding solace in Corinne's raw honesty about her own physical limitations and the psychological toll of transition. These were the true connections, forged not in shared triumph, but in shared struggle and the profound courage to admit weakness. As Layla hailed a cab, her voice cutting through the soft night air, Corinne paused at the curb. She looked back one last time at the grand hall, its lights still blazing, casting a warm glow onto the perfectly manicured lawns of the academy. A few figures still lingered inside, their forms silhouetted against the light. The laughter had been silenced. The judgment had been replaced. And in its place, a fragile new understanding had begun to bloom. A silent promise that some scars, once bravely revealed, could actually begin to heal, transforming not just individuals, but the very fabric of a community. Her own journey had been a brutal one, forged in fire and pain. The initial shock of the IED blast, the agonizing recovery that stretched for months, the profound emotional struggle of losing comrades and a part of herself, the constant gnawing physical pain, a daily reminder of her sacrifice, a persistent phantom limb of her old unbroken self, the deep, isolating grief for her fallen squadmates, a burden she had carried in silence for years. The frustration of trying to navigate a world that simply could not, would not, comprehend the brutal realities of her past, the invisible weight of her experiences. She had sought to erase her military identity, to become invisible, to escape the haunting memories and the unfair judgments that followed her. Yet, in running, in hiding, she had merely postponed the inevitable. True healing, she now understood, came not from burying the past, from pretending it never happened, but from integrating it, from allowing it to shape her, not define her in isolating silence. The commendation, the potential medals, the public recognition were for others, for the Air Force, for the families of the fallen, for the abstract idea of service. But the true reward for Corinne was the quiet peace she felt now, the profound, liberating knowledge that she no longer had to hide, that her story, in all its brutal honesty, had been heard, acknowledged, and, perhaps most importantly, understood. The transformation was as much internal as it was external. The scared, self-conscious woman who had walked into the gala, dreading judgment, had been replaced by someone stronger, more whole, more authentically herself. She was still Corinne Vance, a Marine, a survivor, a veteran living with the indelible marks of war. But now, she was also a catalyst for connection, a beacon of authenticity in a world often consumed by superficial appearances. The cab pulled up. As Layla opened the door, a wave of cool, fresh night air enveloped them. Corinne stepped in, feeling the slight give of the suspension. She knew the path ahead was still uncertain, still challenging. The physical pain would likely remain a lifelong companion. The memories would undoubtedly resurface. But now she walked it with her head held high, knowing that she was not alone, that she had found unexpected allies and understanding in the most unlikely of places. Her truest strength lay not in concealing her vulnerabilities, but in courageously revealing them, in transforming her profound physical and emotional scars into a bridge for connection, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The night had been a crucible, turning judgment into empathy and turning a hidden wound into a shared journey of understanding. She was finally, truly free. What an unforgettable night we've witnessed. Corinne Vance walked into that gala carrying a weight of invisible scars, a story she thought she had to bury deep within her. She faced not just a room full of familiar faces, but a gauntlet of judgment, laughter, and cruel assumptions. Yet, by bravely revealing her truth, by laying bare the raw, jagged lines etched onto her collarbone and chest, she didn't just silence the mockery. She sparked a profound transformation, not only within herself, but in every single person who stood witness. The story doesn't end when Corinne walks out of that ballroom. That night, for many, marked the beginning of a different kind of reckoning. In the days, weeks, and months that followed, the ripples of her honesty would continue to spread, subtly, powerfully. For Jake Harrison, the golden boy of the academy, humbled by the raw, unexpected grief of losing his father, Corinne's unwavering vulnerability became a powerful catalyst. It might have been the very trigger he needed to begin his own agonizing journey of healing, to finally confront and acknowledge the immense pain he'd been burying under a facade of perfection, instead of letting it silently consume him. That night, he saw true strength in vulnerability, a lesson he'd never learned in any academy drill. And for Chloe Davis and Brooke Ellis, who once embodied the superficial judgment Corinne fought against, understanding Corinne's unseen battle fundamentally reshaped their empathy. It wasn't just about an apology, it was about a dawning realization that life, even for the seemingly privileged, is fraught with hidden struggles. Perhaps, moving forward, they would be more compassionate observers, less quick to judge, more willing to look beyond the surface, recognizing that every individual carries a unique, untold narrative. This single act of courage could have reshaped their empathy, turning them into advocates for kindness in a world too often quick to condemn. Corinne's journey underscores a universal truth. Everyone carries battles unseen. For some, like Corinne, these battles leave visible scars, physical reminders of a sacrifice made, a trauma endured. For others, the wounds are invisible. The silent battles against grief, mental health struggles, career disappointments, or the gnawing fear of not being enough. Corinne's bravery served as a profound mirror, reflecting these unseen struggles back to the audience, inviting introspection and a deeper connection. The beauty of her story lies in this shared humanity, in her vulnerability. She forged bridges where only chasms of judgment once existed. And for Corinne herself, she walks forward now not just as a survivor, but as a beacon. Her scars, once sources of immense shame and isolation, become powerful symbols of resilience, courage, and unexpected connection. They are no longer just wounds. They are badges of honor, testimonies to a strength forged in unimaginable fire. This isn't just about an injury. It's about finding profound peace, not by desperately trying to erase the past, but by courageously integrating it into who you are. It's about understanding that the deepest wounds can, in time, become the most powerful bridges between people, fostering empathy, connection, and a universal sense of understanding. Her journey underscores a universal truth. True strength is found not in hiding our vulnerabilities, but in embracing them, transforming pain into purpose. Her final path, embracing her role as a voice for understanding, resonates deeply. Corinne's story is a powerful testament to how a single act of courage can ripple outwards, transforming a moment of public humiliation into a catalyst for collective introspection and empathy. It's a reminder that beneath every uniform, every polished exterior, lies a complex human story, often marked by unseen struggles and profound resilience. She found acceptance not by conforming, but by being relentlessly, bravely herself. This is Veteran Biker, and we believe in the power of every story, every sacrifice, every hidden strength. We believe that by understanding the journeys of others, especially those who have served and sacrificed, we can build a more compassionate and connected world. If Corinne's journey to self-acceptance and profound impact resonated with you, if it made you reflect on the unseen battles around you, please smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us share more vital stories of courage, transformation, and unwavering purpose, ensuring no story of true resilience goes unheard. What did Corinne's story teach you about judgment and empathy? What unseen battle in your own life, or in someone you know, did this story bring to light? We'd love to hear your thoughts and insights in the comments below. And don't stop here. We have 2 more incredible tales waiting for you right now on your screen. Just click and discover more powerful stories of transformation. Thank you for watching. And remember, the most profound changes often begin with the courage to reveal a single unseen scar.